All right, real quick, let's just try to get through this. My concerns regarding Pennsylvania Senate Bill 45 that is been put on the House desk on Friday, and then yesterday, June 29th, of all days, just a few days later, it has been voted on and is up for a second vote tomorrow, July 1st. So we need to get to immediate action on this. Now, the major concerns are this conflates prostitution with sex trafficking. Let's be clear. Sex trafficking is fraud, force, coercion, or minors. It is a form of sexual abuse. It is a form of rape. Okay, so sex trafficking is abuse. Okay, prostitution is a job, a career. And if we're going to get into exploitation, if we ended the exploitation and labor trafficking within America's work industry, our economy would collapse in minutes or seconds, maybe, because there's so much labor trafficking. So let's not even get into the exploitation, because anybody who works and is lower middle class now or under, y'all are getting exploited, right? So let's just take that conversation out of it. Prostitution is a job and a career, okay? Prostitution is not a form of sex trafficking. Remember, sex trafficking is a form of sexual assault / rape. My second major concern is this diverts limited resources away from sex trafficking survivors. Now, in 2017, I moved back to Pennsylvania from Florida, and I started searching for sex trafficking survivor resources, and I have not been able to find a single one, not one. We currently have a 14-year-old child looking for resources, and there are none, right? So this bill diverts any more limited resources away from sex trafficking survivors, and that is horrible. Sex trafficking survivors who lack basic survival resources are much more at risk of being sex trafficked again. Okay, my third major concern is there is very broad statutory language that will create unintended consequences in this. They put prostitution business. What does that even define? Because now in this world of independent contractors, the whole independent contractor thing, right? So prostitution business, what does that even mean? What defines a business, right? Something of value. They actually have this in the text. Something of value. Now this. Let me show you this. This is a Care Bear coffee cup, right? Let me see. No, you cannot see the sticker on it. But it was purchased for me at Gabe's by my boyfriend. So this is something that is very valuable of me, or for me, to me. It couldn't have been more than $10. So, can we define something of value? I mean, these broad concepts create opportunities for very inconsistent interpretation and bad faith enforcements. If you'll remember, back in 2018, the district attorney was charging prostitutes with a, instrument of crime on condoms, a safety device to prevent STIs and pregnancy, was being charged with prostitutes, right? So manipulating and bad faith enforcements happen every day, especially with vulnerable communities. This makes adult prostitution into trafficking. And it, hold on, I need my glasses. Yeah, it becomes integrated through the trafficking laws, through human trafficking laws, through child protective services, through safe harbor funding. Now, safe harbor funding is for sex trafficking survivors, child sex trafficking survivors. And earlier, I said we have a 14-year-old who needs resources. We've been looking since she was 12. Can't find any. There are none. So this safe harbor needs some accountability and transparency. Where the hell are those resources? Sexual offender registration, DNA collection, interstate supervision, professional licensing, which will restrict those who are arrested for prostitution to jobs and housing and all sorts of things. My fifth concern is it removes self-identification and personal agency. Any other career has professionals that talk to lawmakers, right? So the Pennsylvania House now needs to talk to professionals, right, before they can decide on this. Furthermore, sex trafficking survivors should be allowed to determine if they are a sex trafficking survivor or a prostitute. Oftentimes, this determination comes by law enforcement, and that comes with, well, will you work with us to prosecute, blah, 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 whomever they think that needs prosecuted? I don't know, but basically, you become a cop narc, or you get labeled a prostitute and charged accordingly, right? Or you might even, under this bill, get charged for sex trafficking yourself. No kidding, this bill will do that. My sixth concern, and this is a huge one, adults with lived experiences were excluded in every step of this. Every step of the way. There has been no public hearing for sex trafficking survivors or prostitutes. And the fact that they could say, well, it's a private thing, okay, well, we figured that out. You can do testimony in person. You can do it via Zoom or whichever virtual platform is preferred. You can accept testimony via writing, right? Like, there are all sorts of options here. But sex trafficking survivors deserve a public hearing, because those of us who are willing to speak publicly deserve to speak on the abuses we experienced, because this entire legislation is created without child sex trafficking survivors. And if we're talking about protecting the 9-year-olds, the 6-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, the 11-year-olds out there who are being rape trafficked, then we deserve that public hearing. Adults with lived experiences should be centered. My seventh concern is prostitution is also a labor issue. Prostitution should be moved into a labor issue platform. And firstly, it needs to be decriminalized, which we do ask them for. 8. The potential unintended consequences. So this will have so many unintended consequences on family members, intimate partners, roommates, landlords, drivers, service providers, security, hired security, non-profit organizations, right? So non-profit organizations are not allowed to provide services to sex traffickers whenever they're getting grants to provide services to sex trafficking survivors, right? So what happens to the sex trafficking survivors who refuse to work with the police and then get charged for trafficking each other? And 9, and I briefly touched on this already, current sex trafficking survivors still lack services, resources. Pennsylvania developed Safe Harbor Fund years ago, and there's no services or supports or anything for child sex trafficking survivors. Let's forget about the adults for now, because us adults, we're adults, so we're just going to have to breathe and deal for a minute. But children, this is all about the children. Safe harbor laws were passed for the children. They're being manipulated by the courts, and there's no resources. There's no resources for transportation, trauma-informed therapy, alternative therapy such as equine therapy. There's no, long-term recovery services, no paid peer support. Now, Survivor Siblings does offer peer support, but that's not paid. That is all volunteer. So, and we don't want government grants. We won't we won't take them. Like, that was my condition of starting this. We don't take government grants because government grants come with too many strings to harm vulnerable communities, and we refuse to be a part of that as we try to end sex trafficking and slave trafficking. So what we do want is we want stronger penalties for actual sex traffickers. Sex trafficking is a form of rape. We want stronger penalties for child rapists, those who commercially, sexually exploit children and adults. We want stronger penalties for them, as well as stronger penalties for organized sex trafficking networks, because they do exist. Okay, and I'm about to talk about some of them. I have a lot of it written already, but I'm still deciding here. And stronger penalties for individuals who use fraud, force, or coercion, because none of this is okay. Survivor support is missing in Pennsylvania. What we need is increased survivor services, increased access to our resources, because we don't always want their talk therapy. In fact, we never do, because they don't understand. Like, okay, and it's usually somebody who just got out of college, so these nonprofits can underpay them. Again, a form of exploitation. They're playing with sex trafficking survivors, with very new people in the mental health field, and that's just irresponsible. We need more sex trafficking survivor-led organizations. The only way Pennsylvania is going to get more survivor-led organizations to help sex trafficking survivors is by creating safe spaces for us to come to the table and talk about our experiences. Again, this all comes right back to we deserve a public hearing. And survivors need evidence-based policy. We don't need policy based on this savior mentality. The savior mentality is what got in trouble with the war on drugs. They thought that criminalizing them and putting them in prisons would help. Now, this is all just moving all of that carceral stuff that was happening with the war on drugs to full-service sex workers and clients of full-service sex workers. None of this is creating safe spaces for children to come forward and say, hey, something's not right, or I'm being abused, or I know I'm being sex trafficked, or somebody is touching my, say the actual word for it. Don't say foo-foo or la-la. Say the word. I would say it, but this is going on Facebook, and Facebook likes to censor me. So, we need real body parts, okay? We don't have evidence-based policy because Pennsylvania lawmakers have yet to hold a public hearing for this horrible crime of sex trafficking. We deserve that. They have public hearings for rape survivors. They have public hearings for just about every labor industry thing that they have going on. They have public hearings for survivors of other crimes. They have public hearings for adults with lived experiences. They don't remove self-identification from other survivors, and when they have in the past, they have come to fix that. Now, sex trafficking survivors deserve all of this, and guess what? So do prostitutes. So we deserve a Pennsylvania public hearing. That is the message we want. So call your Pennsylvania House representatives. They're voting on this tomorrow. So if you don't want to call, you can email. I do have an email of a lot of them. I don't think I have all 203, but I probably have close to 200 of them. Email in their phone numbers out in Harrisburg. If you're not comfortable talking, you can call after hours and leave a message. Very specifically say that before they vote on July 1st, sex trafficking survivors deserve a public hearing in front of the Pennsylvania House.